Today, as you might have guessed from the thumbnail, we're visiting the tallest point in Cornwall, which is called Brown Willy. So crossing a lovely little stream here on a very old stone bridge. I assume this must be either the River Camel or a tributary of it, but really old bridge there, just made of granite slabs laid on piers. Clapper Bridge, I think they call that. So we're going up there. That's Rough Tor up there, and just beyond is Brown Willy, the highest point on Bodmin Moor and the highest point in Cornwall. The name, which I'm sure some of you may be curious about, is a corruption of the Cornish name Bron Winili, which means Hill of Swallows. I think a few years ago there was a proposal to discard the name Brown Willy and go back to the original Cornish name, but I think it was actually dismissed by locals. I think the Cornish people of the area decided Brown Willy was fine. So it's just a quite long and steady walk uphill through Grey's heathland, lots of sheep around, also cows over there. You have to stay on the lead because animals. So yeah, camera off for now, and then we'll come back when there's something to look at. I think we got here at the right time. Car park's starting to fill up. We're not even remotely near the top yet. That's Greater Rough Tor there and Little Rough Tor there, I think. Stannon Lake over there, or Higher Town Lake, over the other side of the hill, which we can't see yet, is a big reservoir as well, big artificial reservoir. This, though, I think is a natural lake. Anyway, there might be quite a bit of yapping in this one. Eva is very desperate to come off the lead, but for obvious reasons, she can't. There's all kinds of livestock here. I think we're still less than halfway up. Here's the remains of a very old dry stone wall. A lot of the rocks here are just the way they are because nature put them there. I believe some of the rocks, in particular some of the stacked rocks up on the top of the Tor, may be Neolithic structures. There's certainly been human activity in this area. There are stone circles, little remains of huts. There's another boundary here. And a rather denser collection of rocks here, which might be the remains of a cottage or something like that. Yeah, I mean, hard to be very sure, but there does seem to be a square centre to this. We've got one edge here, along there, back there, perhaps with a little bit off to the side. Yeah, I would say it seems likely that there was a structure here. And this large stone here, which obviously is natural, I mean, perhaps that functioned as a table or a seat. But yeah, I'm never very sure how well the camera captures these things, but there does appear to be the outline of maybe a little hut or a cottage or something here. Well, we're definitely past halfway now, and we picked a day for this walk that's a little bit cooler than recent weather. This is the school holidays half-term week, and it was blazingly hot. There was a sudden heat wave at the start of the week, and lots of people going out and getting sunburnt on the beach, including us. And but today, Friday of that same week, a little bit more overcast, definitely cooler, nice breeze up here as well. And I mean, still a risk of sunburn because this cloud cover won't eliminate the UV, so we've slapped on some sun cream and shirts and hats and whatnot. So plan of action, I think, is to visit this little summit here, Showery Tor, and then across the ridge to Little Rough Tor, and then Greater Rough Tor first, and then over the other side to Brown Willy. In case you're wondering why you can hear me breathing, it's kind of normal when you're walking uphill for half an hour. The next part of the video will be narrated by Eva. What do you think, Eva? Really? What about the other bit, though? What's your thoughts on that? Uh-huh. Well, yeah, I see your point. Thank you for your insights. This looks like a good place to stop and have a little sip of water. Sheep up ahead will naturally just avoid us as we approach. One little black lamb. Literally the black sheep of the family. So as we come up to the smallest of these three hilltops, there's a standing stone up there, or maybe a cairn or something. But there are a lot of stones like this where there's an overhang. I don't suppose that stone was put there by humans. It's probably just put there by nature. But these kinds of chance arrangements of overhanging boulders would have been used by shepherds to shelter from the conditions, you know, make their bed underneath. The sheep don't mind sleeping out in the field, but humans often want a little bit of shelter. Oh. Right, so there is the artificial reservoir, and that's Stannon Lake down there, and Rough Tor over there. But first, we're going up here. Well, this does appear to be a cairn. This collection of, this collection of rocks here, with a dip in the middle possibly, that's been excavated. This could be a burial mound of some sort. Over there, in the distance, that is Brown Willy, the next hill along. Quite a hike actually, so yeah, we'll get there, but we're going to go up to Rough Tor first. But first, let's just appreciate this rather fantastical arrangement of stones. You can imagine why humans might have found that a little bit special. So from here we're going to head down through a little valley along a ridge up to Little Rough Tor, which is in the foreground, and Greater Rough Tor in the background. In case you're wondering about the rocks here, this is granite and it's very weathered, and most of what you can see here actually is not granite, it's lichens encrusting the granite, but here's some evidence of weathering, so you can just see the different crystals and grains of the rock are weathering out, and that's from frost action and possibly from the lichens as well. Despite being on top of a hill here, the ground is very peaty and can be marshy, and here's some evidence of that. This is a plant called bog cotton. So it has these fluffy cotton-like, it's not related to cotton or anything, but it has these fluffy tassels, I presume, attached to seeds, and that helps them disperse. But there's a few little tufts of that around here, so in wetter weather, well, I can see lots of moss here. This must be a little bit of a bog here. It's very dry at the moment. So that was bog cotton, as distinct from this, which is just a tuft of wool. Because there are sheep all over, there are little tufts of wool that came loose, perhaps torn off when they rubbed past a sharp rock or a bit of thorn bush or something. So there's little tufts of wool as well. I'm always tempted to gather it up and see if we can make something, maybe felt, a hat. One day we'll do that. So this is Little Rough Tor, and there's a cairn on top. Now very often when you find a cairn on a hilltop, it's just because hill walkers have carried small stones up there and made a pile at the top. This is something a little bit more ancient, I think, and it may be again a burial site. So whilst a lot of the formations here are just natural, so they are just holes in the rocks, you can see how they would have been useful to people. I'm standing on top of a very large boulder, but there's a distinct depression here that, you know, could have held little huts, or perhaps even just hides or cloths or woven mats across the top of it, just to provide a bit of shelter. We're on the leeward side of the hill, so down here would have been a nice little bit of shelter from the wind. Perhaps people just sat with their backs to the rock and had a fire in the middle here. A lot of these smaller rocks look like they've been placed, or at least look like they've been carried here. And there is this cairn on the top here. And so you can kind of make out a distinction between rocks which were probably here quite naturally, the really big ones, and the ones that are big enough for one or two people to carry and lift and place. And so some of that cairn up there looks like it might have been stacked up in modern times. It's not very weathered, but it's part of a larger pile that's even got turf growing through it now, which is probably quite ancient. And again, lots of little crevices and stuff down here where you could have had shelter from the elements. Over there, Brown Willy, and that's going to be quite a trek. We're going to go all the way back down the valley and all the way back up again. Quite a journey, but we've got all day. When you've got features like this, it's hard to imagine that not being a quarried line there, but looking up in the formations up there, there are these cracks that go right down through the rock, so it probably is just one of those. But it's so tempting when you're looking at all of this stuff to just see it as being carved by people, but it might not be. It might just all be natural formations, a lot of it. So this is Little Rough Tor, and that is Greater Rough Tor, or just Rough Tor over there. So we'll go up to the top of there. I think we might not have too much trouble finding a rock to sit on, and a cup of coffee and a nice bit of shortbread. Now, as I say, there is this continuous blurry line between what looks like it's been stacked by humans and what is probably just natural formations of stones. And I'm just wondering now whether that blurry line existed for the ancient people. This was definitely a special place for Neolithic people. And it just makes me wonder, you know, those people would know about building walls, about stacking stones together to make huts and walls and so on. And it just makes me wonder whether when they encountered this, they had that same sense of it looking like it was arranged. And perhaps stories about giants grew up from those sorts of impressions. Because I'm getting that impression myself here now. I'm just thinking, okay, what kind of a person or creature could stack a wall like this? And of course it's not a wall, but I do get the same impression. And so, I don't know, it's easy to characterize the ancient people as ignorant or superstitious and so on, and we mustn't do too much of that, except that I'm echoing a thing I'm feeling right now. And I know that these aren't walls, these aren't built structures, but yet still it conjures a feeling in me that there is order here and that there is perhaps some arrangement. So Rough Tor, or Greater Rough Tor. I'm not very sure that I'm going to climb all the way to the top of this, or it doesn't look like it's that difficult, but I think we'll save the climbing for Brown Willy, which is a higher peak over there. So we're just going to find a rock to sit on, somewhere where there's a nice fresh breeze, enjoy the view and a little bit of refreshment. So priorities: a little drink for doggo. Oh, she's got a biscuit as well. Usually she'd just drink out of my hand like this, but that wastes a lot of water, and that would mean we'd have to carry more, which means our packs would be heavier. So we've got the little collapsible silicone bowl. She's taken to this quite well. Eva, do you want a drink? There's no more biscuits. There's no more biscuits. Have a drink. Good girl. And for us, coffee and some locally made shortbread. Really good. Not for you. So yeah, we decided not to climb up to the top of Rough Tor, just to save our climbing legs for the next bit of the journey, which is to go all the way down this valley here and then up an even bigger hill at the other side, which is over there. And the peak of that one there is called Brown Willy, or Bron Wenili. As you walk past these boulders, little sparkles of crystals, quartz or feldspar or mica perhaps, just glint in the sunshine. So yeah, I think sometimes it's a bit of a too easy trap to fall into, to think of ancient peoples as ignorant or superstitious. But people have always loved stories, and you know, we share stories on social media, stories around a campfire when there's very little else to do in the evening apart from maybe sit and prepare ideas for the next day, or necessary crafts or repairs that can be done by firelight. There would have been stories around campfires, and maybe stories about giants who placed these rocks and built these walls. So nearly down to the bottom of the valley now, and Bron Wenili looming over us now. The highest peak in Cornwall. Standing at 420 metres above sea level. That's 1,378 feet. Supposedly from up on top there, on a clear day, you can see both the north and south coasts of Cornwall. So you can see the sea on both sides of the Cornish peninsula. Not sure we're going to get that view today, it's a little bit hazy. So the bottom of the valley, and another probably quite ancient clapper bridge down here. Actually maybe not, it looks like it's got some modern modifications. There's a culvert system underneath it by the look of it. So yeah, very likely an old bridge, but certainly with some modern changes. Oh, we'll see a fish. Oh yeah, little fish. Oh, dragonflies.
Yeah.
Beautifully clear, but peat stained water coming off of Bodmin Moor here. Yeah, and a little fish. Little minnow or something like that. And perhaps a trout fry. So the path up is cobbled, but this is weathered granite, and so there's lots of little sparkles just in the grit. Let's actually stop and see if we can figure out what they are. It's mica. I tried to pick a piece up and it's just flaky little pieces of thin flaky little shards of mica. Okay, up the cobbled road. That's an old field system and gate posts, and this bit here looks very not natural. Almost looks like a little carved hearth or something. Like a scalloped edge on it.
Yeah.
So from here we got a good view of the other side of Rough Tor, great and small. You can see the remains of a field over there, a wall where the rocks have been cleared away, and a little enclosure has been made out of the stones. And on our way back we're going to head round the side here, because apparently there are stone circles and hut circles, so there's evidence of Neolithic habitation. But for now it's just a relentless load of up. So final push before we get up to the top. We're not quite at the same height as Rough Tor yet, because when we are, we'll be able to see the horizon level with the top of those rocks. I'm just going to get Jenny to take Eva for a moment, because I see bilberry foliage in the hedges here. I think it's a little bit too early for the berries though, but let's have a look. Definitely bilberry foliage, very grazed, so there may not actually have been any berries formed here, because the flowers may have been grazed off before they were pollinated. Let's see if we can find a bit where it's a bit less grazed, perhaps along there. Now wandering through long grass like this can be hazardous. That's why I'm wearing long trousers tucked into my socks today, and I've got tick repellent sprayed on my legs. Now I don't see any bilberries here. The thing is, the berries will be green at the moment anyway, because we're only just at the end of May, so it's too early for fruit, and they'd be very difficult to see when they're green. And all of this foliage here is bilberry foliage. That's our native low bush blueberry, and you can see it all the way across the hillside here. Kind of trained myself to recognize it from a distance, so you can see down here some of this looks kind of orangey green, and it means it's heather and bilberry. We're nearly at the same height now as Rough Tor. I can see the landscape behind through the saddle there, but very soon we'll be able to look down on those rocks. Jenny's ahead of me, and it's only really quite a small number of steps to the top of the hill now, but this is the steepest part. Okay, nearing the top now, and we're not alone, obviously. This is a popular spot. So, can you think of a nicer place to sit and eat your lunch than this view here? We're not quite at the top yet. There's a crowd of people at the top, so we'll just wait and have our lunch down here, I think. Eva would like some lunch too. And lunch today is cheese, tomato and pickle in a roll, and ham, and some celery and an apple. I did bring some extra cheese for the little mouse. So here we go to the summit of Brown Willy, and up here there's a trig point, and again this is a cairn. Some of it's modern, certainly that bit is modern, but all of this bit here is probably quite ancient. So trig point is a map point. It's a ordnance survey structure. A theodolite would be put on here, and it can be mounted very precisely to a datum and screwed down and then strapped down as well, and then it can be sighted to other map points and bearings and measurements and inclinations measured and sighted. So, well, I'm a little bit surprised that we're not looking completely down on Rough Tor. To my mind, that those rocks should be below the horizon, but perhaps they are, because that bank of cloud there is concealing the sea. So here we are at the top of Brown Willy, and kids down there absolutely thrilled that for once they're allowed to shout the word Willy really loud, and they were making good use of that opportunity. So from here, amazing broad views across Bodmin Moor, and again this tour here does look like it might have been used for habitation. We'll have a little look down there in a moment, but it's a hollowed tor surrounded by rocks. It would have provided shelter, in case you're thinking I hadn't noticed that. Very, very weather top. So yeah, reportedly from here on a clear day you can see down to the south coast of Cornwall. You can see the sea somewhere over there, and you'd be able to see the north coast, which is over that way somewhere, just over the hills there. I think it's just the clouds that are obscuring it today. So this being the highest point in all of Cornwall, it's all downhill from here. That's all it could be. But we're not finished yet. There's some things to see on the way down. We're probably not going to go across the saddle of Rough Tor. We're probably going to skirt around the outside, because on the outside there's some stone circles and things to see. And also on the way, well, we missed it on the way up, but while we were up here, we spotted the little ruin of a cottage down there. So I think we might just have a quick but sensitive look inside of that. So back down here at the bottom of the valley, there's this system of fields over here with dry stone walls, and we saw from the top of the hill a ruin of a little cottage. So there's a gateway here. We're going to go through and have a look and see if we can just see inside the ruined cottage. Need to be a little bit sensitive about this because this is probably still private property, and this was once someone's whole livelihood. But we'll have a little wander in here, just sensitive to the fact that this doesn't belong to us. And also trying not to disturb the livestock too much. Sorry, little lamb. We're just passing through. So from up on the hill, it looked like it was just one little cottage. But there's clearly a bit more than that going on down here. There's perhaps a small community. Some of these might just be sheepfolds, but some of them are obviously a little bit more enclosed. I wonder how old these would have been. So there's a slot for the doorpost, and it's just a little stone box. And then over here, well, that's the thing that most resembles a cottage. It still has a chimney stack, but lots of little buildings around. And I would have thought that perhaps they are huts that farm workers, shepherds lived in. So here is the cottage. And so a little walled bit around here. Now I need to be careful because there might be a well or something here, and it probably isn't very well covered. It could be underneath that big piece of slate there, for example. That looks like it might have been like a wood store or something, a little outbuilding, perhaps a food store, a pantry or something. Not probably very much to see inside, but there is a stone hearth with a stone lintel here, so I don't feel too unsafe going underneath here. A very, very old stone hearth and fireplace. Still a little bit of ironwork in there, perhaps where there was a rack for roasting things on the fire. Oh, little store cupboard, perhaps an oven actually by the fireside there. And windows held up by wooden lintels, so at least that one is. So this one's probably a more modern repair than that stone one, which might be original. But even out here we've got little things like that. Looks like it could be a little hearth. And then in this little hut here, and lots more little dwellings and outbuildings and possibly barns, storehouses, little shepherds' cottages or shelters. Fascinating. This, from up the hill, up on Brown Willy, this looked like it was just one little cottage, but it's clearly a bit more than that. It's clearly a little community. Amazing. And just fills me with wonder about what this might have actually been like when it was inhabited and in full use. But it's just a complete maze of little buildings. Perhaps, you know, all that was in the building was a bed and a chair. Anyway, we now need to head off back up, halfway up Rough Tor, and then around that side of the hill. So we're walking through what the map describes as field systems here, and I think that is just because they're punctuated by these drainage channels. From over on the hill over there, on top of Brown Willy, you could see kind of furrow marks down this hillside here. Up ahead of us over there, there are supposedly hut circles and a stone circle. That's where we're headed. As usual, I will map out the route we walked today and include the stats of distance and whatnot. That's on your screen now. You can see the outlines of fields on the hillside there, and older than the ones we looked at earlier, because they're in a more tumble down state of repair. So those are probably a bit more ancient than that cottage we looked at with its little system of yards and fields. Up ahead is Fenacre Stone Circle, a ring of standing stones. We'll take a closer look. So over to my left, what looks like a long barrow. So that would have been a burial site, if that's what it was. If that is a long barrow, it does look like one. And Fenacre Stone Circle here. So, burial site for potentially cremated remains over there. Stone circle here. That does make quite a strong case for this being some sort of ritual site, some sort of gathering site, perhaps where people gathered to honour the dead and cremate them, and then their remains were interred in the long barrow. Not such an impressive circle as Stonehenge, but it's a circle of stones. Should we ask permission before we enter? Does sometimes just send little shivers down my spine thinking about how this circle of stones has been here for thousands of years, and once people stood here, the people who built it stood here and used it for whatever purpose was their intent, and I'm standing in the same place now. So leaving Fenacre Stone Circle behind now, we're just going to head up round the side of Rough Tor. These tors, the cairns on top of these tors are thought to be potentially also burial sites. So again, could be a connection to this stone circle. But perhaps the stone circle was where people gathered just to say their farewells to perhaps important figures in their communities, and then they were either cremated and their remains interred in an urn or something, or perhaps just buried up under the cairns and tumuli up the hill here. So here we go, more circles, in this case in the form of low walls but still standing stones. These are the hut circles. So it looks like maybe an outer wall compound and then some inner structures which might have been dwellings or something. So a little ring here, another one over there, and another one over there. So perhaps a tiny little hamlet or something like that, or again perhaps a gathering place. And it makes me think, actually, you know, maybe these stone circles, perhaps not ritual things after all, perhaps just meeting places. Perhaps it's a place where you could go as a traveller and meet and trade goods with locals or with other travellers. And you know, maybe there was a convention that if you were inside the circle you would be unmolested or something. I'm not an archaeologist, so don't listen to him very much of what I say. It's probably all bunk. These are definitely the remains of some sort of structure. So we're still within the complex of what they're calling the hut circles, and this is another little ring of stones here. I wonder if that pattern is just a natural one and eroded out of the rock, or whether that's a carving. It does look like it's probably natural. But I wonder if maybe somebody chose that stone to mean something, you know, as a marker for the entrance to this little hut here. And a big flat stone in the middle. I wonder if that was the hearth. The sheep don't think so. As you can see, Eva needs to be kept on a lead because there's cows and bulls there, ponies here, including a little foal lying down over there. In fact, lots of little foals. Another one up ahead lying down. These are not tame horses, so in a situation like this it's best to give them a wide berth, which is difficult now because the path we're on goes right through the middle of them. So I'm just going to slow down and give them a chance to understand that we mean no harm, and we will give them a bit of space. But yeah, temptation I think for a lot of people who visit here is to try to pet or feed these wild living ponies. They are not tame at all. They are essentially as good as wild animals, basically. So appreciate them from a distance. So that's rough tour from the considerably rougher side, and just standing looking at all those big flat rocks, I'm a little surprised they haven't been carted away over the years for use as building materials. Perhaps a lot of them have been, and they, you know, we're looking at a tiny fraction of what was once there. So final little push. I think our car is over there in that cutting between the trees. We've got half a shortbread biscuit left and a little bit of coffee. Jenny's got one sandwich left even. She's got more restraint than me. So a little snack and then we're done, I think. So again here we've got an arrangement of stones, and these are all stones small enough to be moved by people, and there's a hollow in the middle. So was this a tumulus, a burial mound, and it's been looted? Was this a little hut You know, were these actually just walls rather than a big mound? I think probably the latter. There's a wall that goes round here, and it does look like this might have been another little settlement. There's a circular wall, something else over there that looks like a structure, and it comes all the way back round here and back up to here, and possibly a gate. So again, I think probably a little settlement. In fact, there's another one just here, so probably here as well, and another one over there, a little circular arrangement of stones. So I think probably a little row of huts, probably part of the perimeter of this little compound. So everywhere we look, we're seeing these little rings of stones, little enclosures bounded by stones. And over here is what might be the most intact example. So there's not much of it, is there? Well, it's very swampy in the middle, so I wonder if this was a well. It might have just been a very tiny hut. That does look like a hearth down there, but then that might have been the well. Sometimes wells were covered just to keep animals from falling into them and to keep dirt and keep the water clean. So it could be a little covered well, or a spring rather. To save the, you know, because there's a river down there and there's a river the other side of the rough tor, but there's no running water up here on the hills, and of course people would need water. So there we are, that's the car park down there. We're on our homeward stretch now. I found that a really interesting walk, and we've had a fantastic time today. I hope you enjoyed that too. It's a nice walk. It's a very pleasant and, although steadily uphill, walk from the car park up to Rough Tor. But in no places is it a particularly difficult climb. And it's well worth a visit. The stones alone at the top of the hill are spectacular enough to warrant a visit. So if you're in the area, give it a thought. So thanks for joining us on this hike up Rough Tor and Brown Willy. I hope that's been interesting. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.